Say information is power, don't they? But how much do you really want to know about your future or the future of your children? The NHS is starting a scheme to test babies' DNA at birth to try and spot genetic diseases like epilepsy, cystic fibrosis. The idea, of course, is that treatment can begin as early as possible. But the test can also spot children who are at a particularly high risk of developing things like cancer, heart disease and Alzheimer's when they grow up. And we now live in what we're calling the information age, don't we? That we can find out so much more. How much do you want to know?
Well, it was interesting. We were talking about this because I thought, as a parent, like the initial part of me, I understand that little parent brain where you want to do everything you can to protect your child. And if there's something you can find out about your child that can save them, you definitely want to do that. But then we start kind of getting bigger and talking about markers, and then you start getting into panic about what your child may or may not be at risk for. It was interesting because my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's last year, and actually she doesn't have the marker for Parkinson's. And yet I have a girlfriend who called me recently very upset because she has a marker for Parkinson's. Now she's panicked she's going to get Parkinson's. So I think there is this weird dynamic where, whilst on a certain level it could be great, I think you start to get into a dangerous zone where people start kind of getting these markers and these pamphlets going, well, you might get cancer and you might get dementia. And then they kind of go home with this fear and this knowledge and no aftercare, no follow through.
Yeah.
And does it then become a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're worried, you've got the weight of and you're looking at your child thinking they might get this,
would it change the way that you saw that child, do you think?
I think it definitely would. I'd be panicking every time, oh, this is going to happen in a couple of years, and I know that I'd probably treat my child with kid. I already treat my children with kid gloves, and it would be just like suffocating for that child. I wouldn't know how they'd be able to. But my main thing is about getting this information. I'm one of these like sci-fi nutters that are stuck in sci-fi.
They're the really crazy ones.
Yeah,
Sci-fi.
I'm one of those nutters. But you watch things on telly and things like there's certain films where they put things, you can put things in your body and find out where that person is. I'd be just worried that you're putting things in there and there's certain markers, and then one day you detonate something and out, you're gone.
You detonate.
She's gone right to detonating people.
It's turned into the Terminator.
It happens so quickly. I know, it happens so quickly.
We're like thinking about the Matrix.
We're like
all the data has got to be somewhere, and who's going to have access to that data in all seriousness to do what with that
it's strange,
data?
isn't it? You don't want to deny information. To have information is to have great power, isn't it? But what we still wrestle with is how we use that information. And ultimately, that still comes down to human beings, doesn't it? We have to decide how we're going to use it. And I mean, we know now that there's lots of information that is swilling around the world that is perhaps being misused. And I suppose that would be my concern here. And we've got lots of people getting in touch, whose children, I mean, for instance, Ngozi says, if I had to undergo a test, it would be if my second son would inherit sickle cell anemia, which my firstborn already has, and it's something that I would really recommend. So, I mean, there are certain conditions that people, it really is to everyone's advantage that you would know about. But then these other rings of information, what do we do with that?
I mean, the idea of this, that every single person is DNA tested, and then what happens after that? If you find that you've got a marker, how differently will you be treated? Say, for instance, the NHS. At the moment, we're having trouble just keeping NHS hospitals clean. This seems like an insane cost. And what are the dark forces behind it? Who wants this information? What point would we get to? I mean, for instance, when I think about all the different things that have been in my family, whether it's cancer or Parkinson's or addiction, then my children could show those markers in their body, and then what would happen? Would schools go, do you know what? No, all jobs, no. Actually, we're not going to insure you because, you could possibly...
This was my thing. When I got pregnant with Teddy, I was not allowed to have insurance because it was considered a pre-existing condition.
Wow, and this is in the States?
This is in the States.
So can you imagine in the States what they do with this?
If you have markers for things, and you have 3 markers for something, imagine trying to get any kind of coverage. No one will cover you.
I bet you soon afterwards you'd see big pharmaceuticals then coming out with new drugs they could sell people
Yeah.
that might have the markers, that might... I just think, yes, information is power, but I think sometimes too much information just creates anxiety. We have to be powerless. We have to be powerless over something.
There's also the rights of the child, because you
Yeah.
have got this information which pertains to this child. When do you tell the child? I mean, would the child get to 18 and say, well, actually, I didn't want to have that information, that actually,
Because that's the case
I
with
think it
genetic
skewed my life?
testing, isn't it? You'd have to... You can't... With certain things, I certainly know with Alzheimer's, I think if you have it, the child has to wait till 18. You can't just, as a parent, decide to genetically test them before they're 18.
Age of consent.
Yeah, age
Yeah.
of consent, yeah. So why would this be different? Because you're still giving them a prophecy, aren't you?
Yeah, but then we don't want to be Luddite. If there's information that's going to be useful to people and it's going to benefit their health, then we don't want to just close our eyes to it. But it's how we use the information. And we are definitely wrestling with that in so many different ways, aren't we?